Hello, this is Dr. Rosie Kuhn, and this is Friday Feasts on Facebook. Now, last week when I was talking about, who am I inside this experience of being me, just after that, this whole new theme came up, and I thought, oh, that's great. And I started working with that all week. And, when I come up with an idea, and it's not like I come up with an idea, but intuitively something strikes me like this is the idea we'll go with. And I write all week and work with, and I'm like it's simmering inside me. So this whole week I was working on a particular issue, and then things showed up that changed that, in the sense that today I got stirred by something, and it's like I want to talk about what I wanted to talk about, but it's not what wants to get talked about. And this shows up for me as a writer, as well as a speaker, facilitator, podcaster, or when I'm doing my painting. My painting has an idea of what it wants, and sometimes I want it to be different, but I have to follow what the painting wants. I have to follow what the writing wants. I have to follow what's happening right now because I'm called to, in a sense. And I think this is where so many of us get caught or stuck in our creativity. Like, we can't push through because we're trying to push through something that's not ours to push through. In the sense that I could talk about what I wanted to talk about. Hi, you guys. Hi, Cynthia. Hi, Elizabeth. I could talk about what I wanted to talk about, but it's like it doesn't flow so much as what I wanted to talk about. So point one is, in your creativity, or whether it's writing, or listen to what wants to be said. Listen what you're being guided to, or encouraged, or inspired to write, or speak, or paint, as opposed to saying, here's what I want to paint. I have some ideas for my next painting, and I'm just listening for how it wants to come across. And whether it is, rather than me saying, I want to paint, because I love painting Christmas stuff, I want to paint a Christmas tree, and I want to paint this and this. And it's like, no, I listen for what is that wants to come through. So having said all that in 2 minutes, I want to shift to what is showing up for me, which is this idea of, I talk about what it's like for each of us to be who we are, as opposed to who we believe we should be, doing stuff that maybe we throw ourselves under the bus for other people, all of those kinds of elements of who we are inside this experience of being human. Some friends of mine who are in close to 90 or 90, they live on the island here. We'll call them Bill and Judy. And they're having to move out of their house that they've been in for 40 years into something much smaller. And so there's come a time where they need help from people that really love them. So I decided I'm going to help them do that. And it wasn't like I decided I was going to help them. I wanted to help them. It's like, I don't have to throw myself under the bus. I'm not martyring myself in any way and going, oh, this takes away. But this is what's showing up. This is what is really cool to do. And so I'm really happy about that. But watching what shows up, in a sense, I don't have the plan or the intention, but here's what I watch, the flow of what's showing up. And so this is what's showing up, helping them move, help them pack, help them clean, all of those kinds of things. And another element popped up yesterday, that they asked me to come to a meeting to sign a rental agreement, and I'm happy to do that. And so I did that. And in that process, the fellow who's a friend of everybody's, who's the rentor for these people, also is going through a process where his parents have been elderly. His mom passed, and he's now dealing with his dad. Not dealing with, this is a good point, the dealing with, we'll call him Eric, but Eric's mom died in June, and so he moved in with his dad to take care of his dad. And he's about my age. Eric is about my age, and he's like so conscientious right now, and so clear of this process of what it's like to be a child of a parent that's aging. And his mom was so independent, she wouldn't take any help, and inevitably fell down and got sick and died very quickly. His dad, Eric's dad, says, hey, I'm happy to get the help and the support. So in that process, and this is just not one guy, but this is what happens to all of us, that he's like, hey, how much money do you have? And how long is that going to last? And he says, for my dad, he's got enough money for maybe 3 years. Realistic element of being both the parent, the person who's aging and in the process of that decline and ending of their life, and the child who potentially has to, or chooses to engage in such a way that this relationship goes the way it does. So that's Eric and his family, which imprinted on me this element of, okay, I'm 67, and how am I going to move forward with this? What's going to happen for me? And there's this part of me that's theoretical, right, and spiritual, and I'm having these conversations about personal and spiritual development and thinking and being conscientious of our heart's desire. And at the same time, then there's this part that goes, yeah, but there's also the survival needs, the shelter, the food of aging like a guru. But we don't have caves here in the United States. We don't have the livelihood for caves as gurus. But that place of what's going to happen. So I want to bring in one more story of a client. This was about 4 years ago. He lives in Colorado. His dad used to live in Texas. And we'll call him Charles. Charles got a call from his dad's girlfriend in Texas. And she said, hey, your dad's getting dementia. He can't be on his own anymore. So Charles and his family, 4 kids and his wife, it's like, oh my God, this is a whole new reality of what's possible. And they weren't expecting that. They weren't considering this possibility. And so Charles had to go down, get his dad, bring him back, create a space in the basement for him. And his dad's like, doesn't want to be in Colorado. He wants to be home in Texas. And that whole dilemma, that whole conflict, the confrontation of like, this is not what we expected to happen as children, right? As children who are growing and aging, but also as people who are aging and having to do something different because they weren't expecting life to take the turns that they take. We can't help how life unfolds. We just can't. We like to control them. We like to think we have control. But the fact of the matter is we don't. And so one of my favorite lines in probably any movie, in the movie As Good as It Gets, is when Jack Nicholson comes into a psychiatric waiting room and all these people are sitting there, and he says, what if this is as good as it gets? And I sometimes ask my clients that when they're sort of like in a place of thinking about the future, not wanting to deal with what is, and most of us don't want to be with what is. We want to continually fantasize or create hope of what's going to happen. Even me, I mean, that's why I'm bringing this up, is I got stirred by this conversation Eric is having, is like, hey, what's in place? What's going to happen if you fall down or whatever? Like, what are those things in place? And so there's that part of me that is in this turmoil and will be on and off for the rest of my life, because it's like, how is this going to end? We always want to know. We want to turn the pages and how is this going to end? When is it going to end? Where is it going to end? And we don't have the answers to that. So that place of, if this is as good as it gets, how do I want to be in this moment with this day? And sometimes being stirred and knowing I was coming to speak with you today and going, okay, so what do I need to do to kind of ground myself? What do I need to do to get kind of settled here in me so I can be present with you? As opposed to going, oh, I'll just read what I did last week or yesterday, what I wrote, and I'll just do that. And it's like, no, I want to be present with you in the moment with what is, which is, what if this is as good as it gets for me? It's just an interesting question. And it's not only just an interesting question. The answer is the most important part of that. What if this is as good as it gets? You can kind of see around me that I live on a beautiful 10-acre piece of property. This is my home. And I live in a small travel trailer, which is my home. And I love it. And I'm very comfortable here. It gives me all the space and room that I need, with a beautiful little kitchen and little fireplace, all kinds of good little things that make me really comfortable. But what if I fall down? And not to want to live in the what ifs, but more importantly, what if this is as good as it gets? And how do I want to be with today? How do I want to be here with myself in this moment? And then be in that question of what it, not in the way of being able to plan, because financially this is as good as it gets. And what if, as things unfold, or in another 20 years when it's me that's doing something different, having to shift, then am I prepared to do that? Or will I be like Eric's mom and fight all the way? I did a radio show on Portland. It's called Aging in Portland. And you can find that radio. I'll put the link up. I'll put the link up soon. But and the fellow I was working with counsels families and how to work together in creating this elderly care process. And he says it's the biggest challenge, the conflict comes because the kids are afraid for the parents, and they want more security in place, or more structure in place, where the parents want that independence, like Eric's mom. She wanted the independence, and that meant she fell and then she died, essentially. So that, how do we, I was a parent of aging, I was a child of aging parents. And that was that process. And now I'm an aging person with children. And what's the relationship so that we can move forward in a way that's going to support me and honor me and them? Now, this, you guys probably know I do a podcast on Aging Like a Guru. That's the name of the podcast, Aging Like a Guru. And you can Google that or go to Podbean. But this isn't about that. This is about who, as a being, as a human being, just a person, having these experiences and being able to check in and say, what if this is as good as it gets? That I like to hope that I'll have this financial windfall that will make such a huge difference in my whatever in the future. But what if that doesn't happen? What if this is as good as it gets? Now I have to be real with me, and not just my hopes or the structure or the survival needs, but with me. And that's the part I want you to get curious with you, and perhaps with people, either your children or your parents, to say, hey, how do we do this together? How do we do life together so that as we unfold, we're ready for as good as it gets all the way through every day? So it's a big conversation. I've had the conversation with my daughter, and she's got in-laws, and she's got her dad, and who's married. And so those are 4 people, or 2 different couples, and then there's me. And I sometimes imagine us like in Willy Wonka, the first movie, if you ever saw it, all the grandparents are in the same bed. There's, I think, 4 of them. But here I imagine all 5 of us in one bed at my daughter's house. She's taking care of all of us. Now, that's absurd, obviously, but that's the image that I have, is like, how are we all going to get taken care of? Nobody knows. But in this moment, that place of what is and what stirs in you, what stirs in me, in our humanness, when we consider that this is what is happening. And I can theoretically talk about how wonderful it is when we are in our guru-ness, or we're accepting and allowing our wisdom to be truthful and there's a part of me that can say, hey, I'm taken care of and I lack nothing, and I'm really clear about that. And there's a part of me that goes, yes, and the unfolding of today is all there is. And I hope you get what I'm up to here and where I'm going with this. So number 1, allow what is showing up to express through your creativity. Don't stop and think, well, I have to do it this way, I have to do it this way. Let your creativity come through you the way it wants to. And so that, and what wants to come across is really, really important. Without that editing and the critiquing of that, that's point number one. Number two is pay attention to that part of you that keeps imagining, oh, it's going to be okay, it's going to be okay, it's going to be okay, or we hope it's going to be okay, or somebody else, all of those things that we do that doesn't allow us to be here today in this moment with the truth of us each aging, and or that we're going to be supporting people somewhere, somehow down the road who are aging. So I think that's pretty much it for today. Like I said, you can join me on Aging Like a Guru podcast. It's called Aging Like a Guru, Who Me, and or on my Facebook page while you're here, and or my books. You can find those at Amazon or on my website, as well as blogs, videos, and if you'd like to get some coaching with me, do some work around these questions that I ask, I'm happy to support you. All right, big hugs to you. Thanks for being here. And I want to acknowledge Ramir and Jean Neary is here, Marge Frankie's here, Don Smith, Ed and Marilyn. Dawn Harrington joined us, and Declan, Angelica. Thanks, you guys. Carmela joined, Elizabeth. Thanks, you guys, for being here. I really appreciate it. All right. Bye for now.